Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
They will, under my proposal.
It's not what you said, and it's not what the party has said.
And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris.
We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch.
All right,
China ate your lunch, Joe.
He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it,
not
kid.
militia. If he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
This guy.
I want to
in
see an
fact,
honest ballot cut.
He's just afraid of counting the votes.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this. Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that. You didn't want me to ban.
All right, gentlemen.
Which was heavily.
Mr. President,
you would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later,
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating
worst
him,
part
not
of
me.
Obama.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe.
Mr. President,
Even
Mr.
the
President,
people who
please stop.
testified.
No, go ahead. No. I'm Mr. President.
3.5 million, Joe.
No. Sir, stop. Wait a minute. Mr. President, no, Mr. President. No.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
He stood up.
No. The answer to the question is no.
Wow. That reminds me of every meal at my house growing up. I'm having PTSD right now. That, of course, was a little snippet from the 2020 debate. Poor Chris Wallace, moderator. We're going to talk about all that in a second. And we are also going to chat with CNN senior legal analyst Elie Honig today. He's going to help unpack the week's events. But first, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening. And we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So let's get to our two big things. The first being the election, and of course, the debate. There's going to be a debate. We saw, for those of you who don't really know what big dick energy is, we saw it this week from Joe Biden when he challenged Donald Trump to debates. And Trump immediately, it was astounding how quickly the challenge was made and accepted, and the details were worked out, like seemingly within like an hour, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I was stunned, actually. I didn't know what to think. I thought that was going to be, I just thought it wasn't going to happen.
It might not happen.
Well, of course there's that.
Yeah. I'm still thinking like, this isn't going to happen. There's no way it's going to. Because the rules changes so far are taking away a lot of Trump's ammunition.
I ate a whole container of Tums. I was so anxious thinking about how this is going to play out.
Well, if you listen to the clip we just played, like, the changes they've made so far and apparently agreed to is that there won't be a live audience, which I think is paramount. Okay, because Trump needs to feed off of that adulation, the feedback that he gets in an immediate sense. And also, like, mic stops. They're going to be prevented, supposedly, from going over their allotted 2 minutes or 30-second rebuttal times. They will be prevented from interrupting, apparently. So I guess whoever's moderating is going to have some control, or someone's going to have control there.
The candidates' mics will be muted as their time expires.
Right. If they do actually happen, these debates really have to be orchestrated in a way that's very different from 2020, because that was not productive. Donald Trump, it's like he gets the home court advantage all the time because he doesn't have to tell the truth. He can just pull things out of thin air. And that's
one place he can pull them out of.
And that's what he does. And so I think the biggest thing they need to change is fact-checking. They need to add fact-checking. I'm going to talk about that in my rant, because without that, it just becomes like a Trump propaganda spectacle.
Yes.
You know?
They won't fact-check.
Why watch a debate if you cannot be assured as a voter sitting at home that what you're hearing is the truth or not? What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, but TV debates in general are nonsense, because none of this is actually a reality that a president's going to be making a decision in 30 seconds. Someone comes into the White House, the Situation Room, it's like, President, you need to tell me this, and you only have 90 seconds to say it. It doesn't really tell you on either case, on either side, who's going to be a good president. It's just a show for TV.
Well, I think on some level it does show temperament, it shows intellect, it shows knowledge. So I think those things are important. I think the debates that we've seen in the past perhaps were part of the reason why Trump lost, is that he didn't show temperament. He didn't show command of the issues. But it's, to me, so much worse now
Wait,
than it
he
was.
lost? You just lost 2 people in our audience.
Matty, who's the president of the United States? Well, it's obvious. Joe Biden is sitting in the open. No, I'm asking you, who won? I love those.
Exactly. Those are the best.
Those are the best interviews where they just cannot answer the obvious question.
Yep.
So I do think there's some real value, especially right now, in demonstrating Trump's erratic, unpresidential behavior. So, and we're definitely going to get some of that, or a lot of that.
Without a doubt. But, about if Joe Biden flubs, which is human, it will be the whole story of the entire debate.
Just some, yeah.
The stakes are very high for Joe Biden in a debate like this. And just one little flub is going to be exaggerated in all of the conservative media. Well, I won't even call it conservative media, the crazy media. And it could lose the election for him because he says the wrong thing and they just say he's senile for 7 weeks.
Or just the opposite could occur.
And I would take one step further. I would say all media, not just the conservative media.
Yeah,
If he
I agree.
flubs.
Yeah.
I mean, the stakes are much higher for him because everyone knows Trump's going to be a show.
There's a double standard. We'll talk about that when we talk about the trial. But again, when you're talking about who we really need to reach, it's a very small group of people that can move a needle. So will those people get what they need to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm either done with this guy or there's no way I'm not going to vote for Biden again, even though I'm not thrilled with Biden. The interesting thing is these are independently produced debates. They're not going through the nonpartisan commission on presidential debates, which is a break from history. And even more interestingly, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is boxed out.
I'm so disappointed.
And the humor in this is that they can't agree on immigration, they can't agree on abortion, they can't agree on anything. But these 2 guys got together and agreed to cut out Bobby.
Easy peasy, done.
So bipartisanship is back, folks. It's back.
Thank goodness for that one.
What do you think? Should he be at the debates?
Is that a trick question?
No, it's a
No. No.
If he has met, I'm asking as devil's advocate, if he has met the criteria, the traditional criteria, whether it's polling or whatever, we don't have to like what he has to say. We don't have to agree with him. But just from a standpoint of democracy, does he have a point if he says, hey, I should be at these things and I'm not?
I mean, these are completely made up rules all the time, and they make up the rules to favor whatever the parties that are, there's only 2 parties that really are ever going to win. So, no, I mean, in the primaries or in the general election, the rules are completely made up. So there's no right to anything. It's just whatever the rules say. And I think for democracy, it actually is better that he's not there.
Bobby is definitely going to use what I just said as ammunition. But my personal opinion is that there is no way he can win this election. And if there's no way he can win this election, then all he does is serve as a spoiler.
Yes.
And if he's going to be serving as a spoiler and nothing else, why on earth would these 2 guys agree to have him on a stage? So I agree with the decision, but you know that conversation is going to dominate for a while.
Sure.
And that argument is going to appeal to the base of people that he appeals to, who already see him as the outsider who needs to disrupt a corrupt system, a system where the 2 parties can. I mean, you can hear what the spiel is going to be.
He's already saying that.
Yeah.
I've talked to RFK supporters, and all they talk about is how the Democrats and the Republicans are keeping them off the ballot, or they're trying to.
Sure.
And it's all, that's what they play on that. That's fine.
I saw a clip of a Trump supporter. He was interviewed by somebody, I forget where, and the question was, would you vote for Trump if he was a convicted felon? This guy wearing a MAGA hat, he was like, Trump could murder someone on the steps of the White House, and I would still vote for him.
Not surprising. Just not.
It's not surprising, but I'm still shocked by that mentality. That someone could literally see somebody murder someone and go, yep, that's my president.
More power to him.
That's a broken human being. That's just insanity. That is real cult shit.
Yeah, it's a cult of personality.
Yeah.
And as a cult leader, you can't do anything wrong. So whatever he does is fine with them.
Yeah. Well, Trump was this week 3, week 4 of his New York election interference trial, which some people call the hush money trial. I choose not to. I went down to the courthouse this week, stood outside, talked to a few of these he can murder somebody supporters, and, that's their guy. They're supporting him. He didn't have a lot of supporters. There's hardly anyone there, but they don't care. They do not care. And why should they care when they have elected officials who say shit like this?
First of all, I'm disappointed in the courtroom. I'm hearing Mr. Trump. He is former President Trump. Give him some respect. I mean, that's what that place is in there. It's no respect. Here's what I'm seeing, too. It is depressing. That courtroom is depressing. This is New York City, the icon of our country. And we got a courtroom that's the most depressing thing I've ever been in. Mental anguish is trying to be pushed on the Republican candidate for the President of the United States this year. That's all this is. He's been here a month. I am disappointed in looking at the supposedly American citizens in that courtroom, that the DA comes in and he acts like it is his Super Bowl. And I guess it is, to be noticed. But that's what's happening in this country. The Republican candidate for President of the United States is going through mental anguish in a courtroom that's very depressing. Very depressing.
What kind of respect do we have to give him other than he's innocent until proven guilty?
And this is coming from Tommy Tuberville talking about how depressing the courtroom is. This is a man who has railed against safe spaces, Gen Z, Gen X. He stopped all military promotions because they were too, quote unquote, woke. But he clearly needs a safe space because the courtroom is just too depressing for him.
The mental anguish. Yeah, look, he's been here a month. Like he talks about, like he's at a spa. He's been here a month. The food sucks. The pool is closed.
He comes in 4 days a week, by the way, for like a few hours. It's hardly, like he's in jail.
I love how these people make it out to be like, excuse me, he's on trial. He committed crimes allegedly, and he's on trial.
And taxpayers, you voted for him.
Yeah.
So, look at his hard work. Look what he's doing for you.
It's like Donald Trump when he says, I should be out campaigning. I should be out there. Like, you should. But you should have thought of that before you committed crimes, because now you're on trial for them. Like, enough of this victim bullshit. God, the whiniest bunch of snowflakes, and they complain about us.
Exactly.
There was a little bit of a Perry Mason-like moment yesterday with Michael Cohen's testimony, texts and a 96-second call and the 14-year-old prankster. And this, first of all, this thing happened almost 10 years ago. Could you remember phone conversations that you had 10 years ago?
The average age in this room is pretty high, so I would be impressed if we all could remember what we had for lunch yesterday.
Yes, exactly.
This is a little...
it's like,
micro.
Okay, so maybe he talked about the 14-year-old prankster a little bit, but then he talked about the payoff. Like, they're trying so hard to impugn his credibility. It's just more of the double standard. Like, Michael Cohen's credibility is in question because he sells T-shirts and has a podcast. Okay? As a witness, should he be doing that? But the defendant sells gaudy sneakers, blasphemous Bibles, moronic NFT. That's all okay. He can do that. Trump can sell whatever he wants. But somehow if Michael Cohen is selling T-shirts, that's it. His credibility is shot. The other double standard is, Michael Cohen is out for revenge. He's out for revenge. His book is named Revenge. Donald Trump wants to assassinate his opponents. Are we fucking crazy here? Give me a break. What's good for the goose is good for the what, Jen?
Gander.
There
go
you go.
Sheila.
But what's most interesting this week was the parade of the sycophants. All dressed like Trump. All dressed like Daddy. You got to hand it to him. He has these people whipped. Whipped.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
And then you have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and there's a question: is there who's paying for all these visits to New York? Who's paying for the Speaker of the House to come to New York to stand next to Trump, to sit next to Trump, to impugn the judicial system, to denigrate the case and the prosecutors before the case is even over, before all the evidence was even heard. Who's paying for that? And is that what the Speaker of the House should be doing? Is that how he's upholding the Constitution, which he swore an oath to do?
I just want to know why Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't made it there yet, because I'm kind of disappointed.
She doesn't look good in the blue suit and the red tie.
That's it. Okay.
And then also Trump violated the gag order again yesterday by talking about one of the prosecutors. That's a direct violation of the gag order. So let's call that number 11. Why isn't he in jail? He was threatened with jail time. Why isn't he in jail? This is why we're in this place in this country. Because there's a madman. No one ever, from the founding fathers to today's prosecutors to the Attorney General of the United States, no one could ever fathom someone like Donald Trump, and they're too afraid to do any damn thing about it. And that's why in May of 2024, when this fucker should have been shut down in January of 2021, he is more powerful, more potent, more influential than ever. It's insane.
Well, the systems aren't actually working. The guardrails aren't really working. They're going so slowly that they are effectively have almost stopped.
No, it's
he's
very
he's
scary.
testing the system
Very
every
much
damn
so.
day.
Yes.
And threatening violence and all of the things in our Constitution, including and especially separation of powers and co-equal branches of government and checks and balances, have all been tested and they have failed. And we have one branch of Congress that has completely been co-opted and under his spell, and the another branch, the judicial branch, is also teetering on that as well. And it's pretty scary because those are the guardrails. Without them, you can say anything you want, but if those three things don't work the way they're supposed to work, executive, judicial, legislative, we don't have democracy anymore.
And I don't understand why people don't take Trump and his campaign seriously when they talk about out loud. There's no secret. They're talking about how exactly they're going to consolidate more executive power.
Sure, it's on their website. It's on the website. What is it called? Something
2025.
2025, yeah. I mean, it is shocking. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My son will be happy. My winner is the U.S. military because reports of sexual assaults in the U.S. military drop for the first time in nearly a decade. My loser, Justice Alito, for flying an upside-down American flag over his front lawn as the Supreme Court was considering an election case. How can he and Thomas not be pressured to recuse themselves from the two SCOTUS cases directly dealing with Trump this court season?
My loser is New York City Mayor Eric Adams, where we just revealed a private WhatsApp chat between billionaire donors and Adams that revealed that he was only too happy to satisfy them by dispersing pro-Palestinian protesters at Columbia University and take them up on donating funds for private investigators to investigate the students. My winner is friend of the show, Jasmine Crockett. Her stupendous takedown of Marjorie Taylor Greene at the House Oversight hearing was delicious.
My winner is also Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And props to AOC for coming to Crockett's defense. My loser, Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, who gave a commencement speech at Benedictine College in which he referred to Pride Month as an example of the, quote, deadly sins, and questioned President Biden's Catholicism, and said a woman's most important title is, quote, homemaker. All right, that brings us to the weekly rant. So I am really excited about and looking forward to the first presidential debate next month. I think Biden will once again wipe the floor with Trump, as he did in both 2020 debates. But there definitely needs to be meaningful rules changes this time around to prevent Trump from totally shitting on the process. I think it's great that there won't be a live audience for Trump to play to. As we see from his rallies, he thrives on that attention. And having some kind of mic control will prevent Trump from constantly interrupting the way he did last time, attempting to hijack every Biden moment. I think giving the moderators more power to control the chaos will definitely help. But here's the problem. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He is not tethered to the truth, and reality is what he wants it to be at any given moment. So, there must be fact-checking in real time. This is really not rocket science. There should be the same segments we always have: domestic policy, foreign policy, the economy. But then think of it like a hockey game with 3 periods. In between each period, there should be a 5 to 10 minute fact-checking segment. And Trump can be free to lie all he wants, but he needs to know that his bullshit is going to be debunked in real time if he does that. Okay, let's get to Elie Honig. He's an attorney and CNN senior legal analyst and the best-selling author of Hatchet Man and Untouchable: How Powerful People Get Away with It. He's a former assistant United States attorney for the Southern District of New York, and he also hosts podcasts and writes for CAFE and Vox Media. Elie, welcome back into the back room.
It's great to see you, Andy. This is my day off, and to show you how much I think of you, I am happy to still join you. It's not even really my day off. It's my day.
Oh, come on. You're such a slacker. What have you been doing all week?
Yeah, it's been, I've barely been at it. You know, there are days, do you have like a step counter thing on your phone?
Yes.
Like number of steps?
I'm very impressed if I make it over 10,000.
Yeah, so but if you look at my steps, the days when I'm on air, because I'm on air basically either on air or in transit from, 9 in the morning till 11 at night, I will have days with like astonishing levels, like 3,000 steps, like a barely ambulatory human.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy. But like it's been, before we dig into the trial, I will say this. I found it fascinating. I mean, this is what I did for a long time. This is my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to say this. We don't know what what the verdict's going to be. We can talk about the likelihood of various outcomes, but this has been a good and fair trial. Like it could have gone much worse. I certainly have my criticisms of both sides of the case itself. Not really of the judge, only pretty minor things of the judge, but everyone's done their job. Like there hasn't been outrageous explosions. None of the parties have done anything outrageous other than Trump early on with the gag order. The lawyers have
or
done
yesterday
well,
with the gag order, like he is.
Yeah, that was. Tell me what he said, because I actually was like grabbing a
he
drink.
was talking
or
about.
I heard it was close to the line.
Yeah, well, he was talking about Matthew Colangelo, the prosecutor, and he was attacking him, and that's not what he's supposed to be doing, according to the.
Yeah, I guess under the strict gag order, he's only allowed to talk about Bragg. Yeah. But so okay, with the exceptions of the gag order, but like. This has been a smooth process. I mean, what's your impression, Andy, as a non-lawyer, / normal person who's watched this play out to the best of our abilities, given that there's no cameras in the courtroom? What have you made of it so far in terms of just the overall process and fairness and smoothness of it?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's a fair one, but it's hard to answer in a real meaningful, substantive way because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not in court. What I try to do is bounce between CNN, MSNBC, the newspapers, people like yourself, Andrew Weissman, people like that, who either are inside the court or are getting real-time information sent to them, play-by-play, so to
That's
speak.
That's fair.
And it seems like there's some question as to the effectiveness of Todd Blanche. It seems like there's some mistakes maybe that have been made by the prosecution. I still don't understand what the point of a gag order is if it's never really enforced. I mean, fining Donald Trump $1,000 is like, what is that?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
He clearly doesn't care. And so are we at a point where we're now telling America there is somebody above the law?
Yeah, let me respond to a couple of things. Mistakes and missteps and maybe not effective, like you noted, is completely part of the game. It's like watching a basketball game and saying, well, they missed some shots and there were turnovers. Like, so that doesn't, I mean, we'll talk about some of those missteps. They're really important. But in terms of the fairness of this, that doesn't concern me. The gag order, the problem is, and I not sympathize, but I give credit to Judge Merchan because he's really limited by the law. $1,000 is the max he's allowed to fine. I mean, I'm sure that law was written in 1848, when $1,000, I don't know when it was written, but I'm sure
he warned him with jail time.
He did.
I mean, you're a dad. How many times have you say to your kid, like, if you don't clean your room, you're going to be punished? I mean it this time.
Right. No, it's definitely, I've written that it's the equivalent of like a disciplinary problem. I use the kid analogy too. Like if your kids know that there's like, if you're on a vacation and your kids know there's one big punishment that I am afraid of, but I know he's not going to do it. I know they're not really going to turn the car around. And then you have a bunch of little punishments they don't care about. But I will say the timeline's important. Trump has not violated the gag order since he was warned. Now, or maybe yesterday with Colangelo, what you pointed out, but that would be the first time. I'm not saying Trump's a good boy or anything. I'm just saying the judge's warning seems to have largely worked.
Or, not to just hyper-focus on the gag order, but what about the parade of the sycophants this week? Are they not an extension of him? Aren't they violating? If he put them up to it as his surrogates, isn't that a violation?
If he told them, if he put them up to saying things that violate the gag order, that violates the gag order. But there's no way, A, there's no proof of that, and B, even if there was proof, there's no way to prove it unless he's caught on tape or something. And by the way, these guys, I'll do a little amateur political analysis here. They don't need to be told what the talking points are.
Right.
All they have to do is turn on the TV. So yeah, I mean, look, it's a messy process. It's a First Amendment process. Let me ask you a question. Let's sort of cut to the chase. And I really would ask you for like an honest answer here. How would you feel if a elected DA and I asked you this as a person who you are proudly liberal and a really articulate, passionate, advocate. And I agree with much, not all, but much of what you say in life in general. How would you feel if a elected district attorney in a county in Mississippi that was 90% Republican indicted a prominent Democratic politician, and the case was based on Michael Cohen's word? How would you feel about that?
Well, not to be a politician and evade the question, but
come on, it's your podcast.
Well, but these are some of the questions I have on my list to ask you. So I will answer it with I'll answer your question by asking questions.
Fair enough.
I wouldn't have a problem with it per se, because I tend to approach things like, let the chips fall where they may.
Yep.
A jury of your peers are going to judge the evidence, and I have faith in the system that the right thing is going to be done. I'm not a conspiracy person. I'm not like, because they live in Mississippi, that means they cannot be.
Well, I didn't so much mean the jury. I meant the decision.
Any of the process, okay. Because
and I share that. I'm process oriented too. I don't have any sort of rooting interest in the result here. But why I started with what I started is because obviously I'm very interested in what happens. It's a huge deal. But I think given the fairness of the process, everyone should agree right now, not knowing what the verdict is, that unless something dramatic happens, this has been a fair trial, and neither side.
I think it seems like it's been a totally fair trial.
It's a tough jury pool for Trump politically, given just the demographic, the 85% or so of Manhattan that voted against Trump. But that doesn't mean it's an unfair trial. Right. Certainly not it doesn't mean it's a constitutionally unfair trial. It's just this crime had to be charged in Manhattan. That's where it happened. So it's not like, the notion that prosecutors cherry-picked Manhattan is there's nowhere else they could have. You need venue and jurisdiction. They had to charge it in Manhattan. So I reject that, Trump claim that it's unfair. But I also think it matters what the jury pool composition is. I mean, I'll tell you this: if the jury here was drawn from 12 people who legitimately were neutral on Donald Trump, like who magically had never heard of him or were just genuinely 50-50 on him. I don't know whether such a person exists. I think there's a close to zero chance of conviction. I think much of the prosecution's hope rests on people hate this guy, and especially in this town. The quality of the evidence so far is sorely lacking, and Michael Cohen's the sorest of those sore points so far.
So I want to get to Cohen in a second, because there's obviously a lot of Cohen news in the last 24 hours. But back to your question, doesn't this hypothetical kind of balance out when you, instead of just limiting it to the trial in New York, you say, okay, what about Florida? What about, Aileen Cannon? What about the jury pool down there? Well, the elements seem to flip. And I have the same, despite what I believe is perhaps real judicial bias by Cannon, I still maintain the same hope that the process will work, that despite the jury, the demographics, that they will eventually, if this thing ever gets to trial, which I do believe it will, especially if he's not president, that the jurors are going to hear the evidence and vote according to their conscience. Doesn't mean there won't be one person and there's a hung jury, but so I look at Florida and New York the same way. There's no inherent advantage or disadvantage.
Yeah, well, let me push back a little. First of all, the jury pool in Florida is basically 50-50, right? Trump won Florida, but it was like 51-48 or something, 52-48. So it's hard to say that's a loaded jury. Second of all, who made the decision to charge there was Jack Smith.
Right.
And by the way, legally, that's not only probably correct, he might have actually had no legal basis to charge it in D.C. So I think he did the legally right. I applaud Jack Smith. Rather than jury shop, he did. And Cannon, I know she's quite controversial, but what exactly, look, I don't think she's a great judge. I mean, her decisions are sometimes incomprehensible, and she's not moving particularly fast. But I think the big sin that she's made is that she hasn't rushed this trial to get it in before the election. Because if the election was 2 years out, nobody would be batting an eyelash at any of the, I don't think I misused that phrase. Nobody would be raising an eyebrow. I think batting an eyelash is when you're trying to seduce somebody. Nobody would be raising an eyebrow.
Or if you want to cause a fight in the House.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's right. That was wild. But if the election wasn't right around the corner, I don't think it's not like this case is taking a long time. It was indicted 10 months ago. That's nothing. And your run-of-the-mill federal conspiracy case takes 18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years. So I think the core complaint with Eileen Cannon is she's not rushing this to get it in before the trial, which I don't agree that it's the judge's job to do that, by the way. I think you can make the reverse criticism of Judge Chutkan, who seemed intent on jamming in a mega complicated trial, but until the Supreme Court took the immunity issue, which I've been saying probably on this show, but I've been saying for a long time, Supreme Court's definitely going to take immunity and definitely going to waylay this thing. So, but I hear you. I hear your point.
I mean, if I was to ask you, like, okay, let's play this out. If Judge Merchan were to do things that would make Elie Honig think that he's in the tank for the prosecution, wouldn't it kind of be the things that Cannon has done in Florida? Like
what, though? What specifically?
Like all the motions that she has put on the table and then kind of refused to...
All she's done is deny Trump's motion so far. What motion has she granted for him?
I don't mean granting. I just mean that, and we see this in other places as well, including the Supreme Court, where this incessant kicking of the cans down the road and oblivious to timelines that may be important to the American people.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you. In your view, should a judge take an approaching election into account in his or her scheduling decisions?
That's a really good question, and if I were you, I would be ramming that question up my butt as well. But
because the follow-up, if the answer is no, then this case is on a not at all slow track. This case is on a normal track.
The answer is not going to be one that you as a lawyer is going to like, and that is, I don't know. These are extraordinarily difficult, challenging, unusual circumstances where, if you believe people that you watch on TV and read and trust their opinions, America's democracy could be teetering. Right?
Right.
So if that's the case, is there some consideration? I'm not saying jam shit through to the point where it's going to end up with an inefficient process.
Right. No. Yeah, right.
But should there be some mindfulness or consideration that the American people have a right to know if someone is a criminal?
Right. Well, I think that's the countervailing argument that, yes, the American people have a right to know that. It's not a right in the true sense of the word right, but we all feel like we should know. But the problem is, if you think it's okay for a judge to take a looming election day into account, then which way does that push? Because there are a lot of judges out there and tens of millions of people, and probably, 30% of the judiciary, let's be conservative here, who think it's an outrage to have a trial right before an election and that it's political interference, and that there are many smart judges who think if I'm allowed to take the election into account, I'm going to postpone this case because I don't think it's appropriate to wait 2.5 years to charge a case so that hopefully it falls right on the eve of the election. So if we're okay with judges considering elections, that can't only mean only if they put it before an election if I want it or after an election. It's got to mean, you know what I mean? So it's a problematic approach.
Well, it's interesting because you and I have talked so many times now. I start to think like you.
Don't do that.
So sometimes I'll think of a question. I'd be like, no, this is how Elie's going to shoot that shit down immediately. But like, you're right. It should go both ways, but it depends what the motivation is. If the judge is thinking not, I'm a conservative and I want to push it down further and stall the process. If the judge truly is respectful of the Constitution, the rule of law, and takes into consideration that Donald Trump has exploited every opportunity with the help of judges in the courts to delay this process, and he's telegraphed that if that's the case and I win, I'm going to shut these things down. I think on some level, some of that has to be factored in. I mean, the Supreme Court, tell me that they're not somehow using their conservative beliefs to make decisions. I mean, so it's just a matter of
justices are, and the liberal justices are using their. I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah, so
they use their beliefs to make decisions. Yeah,
I just think he's exploiting the system, and they're allowing him. Now, the part where I hear your voice in my head,
yes,
is, well, Andy, that's just good lawyering. That's what any defendant would do. That's what any lawyer would want to do. Push this shit down as far as possible because anything can happen that would end up in their client's favor. Right?
Exactly.
Am I right? Am I channeling you right?
No, you're exactly right. All right.
Michael Cohen, was yesterday a real Perry Mason moment?
Let me establish my bona fides. Is that how you say it? Bona fides? Whatever. Let me establish my impartiality right up front. After the first day of Michael Cohen's cross-exam, the 2 hours, I said, this cross-exam is going nowhere. They haven't touched Michael Cohen as of this point. It's just, it's not doing the job. I think that changed with the second day of cross-exam. And I think the moment you talked about was a huge moment. Look, we all know, and it's going to be fairly undisputed, Michael Cohen has a long history of lying. He pled guilty to all these different frauds and perjury offenses. He hates Donald Trump. He wants, with a white-hot passion, for Donald Trump to go to jail. All of that is relevant, by the way. We take it for granted, but that all matters. What happened, though, in that moment that you refer to is that a core piece of Michael Cohen's testimony was called very seriously into question. Cohen said, key phone call, October 24, 2016. I got on the phone. I called Keith Schiller. He put me over to Trump, and I told Trump the thing with Stormy is all resolved. Turns out there's a bunch of texts before and after that call, which are all about a completely different topic, the fact that Michael Cohen was getting harassed by a 14-year-old. And as I was covering this for CNN, we get the little text feed that pops up and we react on air. And I said, whoa, everyone, this is a big deal. And then as I was explaining why it was a big deal, you hear Anderson Cooper, who had been inside the courthouse, comes running in and he goes, he heard what I guess he was listening to our broadcast. He goes, oh my God, Elie's exactly right. That was unbelievable in there. They just ended Michael Cohen. I'm paraphrasing what Anderson said. They put him on air with me and I interviewed Anderson and I said, after he described, he was breathless. I said, after he described it, I said, Anderson, if I can you can see this clip, it's on the internet. I said, if I can put you in the jury box, having seen that, do you believe Michael Cohen's version of that story, of that piece of testimony? And Anderson said, no, I think he was making it up. And he said, and this is, Anderson Cooper's not, he's not a MAGA guy. He said, I think Michael Cohen was making it up, at least that part of the story. And he said, I absolutely have doubts about Michael Cohen's testimony. And the problem is, look, I'm not so caught up on could he possibly have discussed the 14-year-old kid and Stormy Daniels in 96 seconds? Sure. Because, but I mean, the problem is he's never mentioned any of this before. It all caught him by surprise. And it certainly looks like that the purpose of the call was the 14-year-old kid.
Could he have just forgotten? I mean, it was like almost 10 years ago. I don't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday.
The problem he forgot is the prosecutors presented him under oath, prepped to an inch of his life. His lawyer has said publicly he spent over 100 hours prepping. You don't get to make mistakes there. If you are presenting somebody to a jury, I have to prove my case beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a key part of the key witness's testimony. He can't go, whoops, my bad. And if he did, you're allowed to. So I think what the jury takes away from this is either Cohen's a liar, and I don't think, by the way, Cohen's a fabulist. I don't think Cohen, and the jury, I don't think he makes things up entirely out of whole cloth. But if the jury finds that he tends to exaggerate or maybe tweak things here or there, and this case could come down to a couple words, what Trump was told, what Trump said. If you find that Cohen maybe, or to quote David Pecker, the first witness, tends to exaggerate, or if you quote Keith Davidson, the prosecution's third witness, every word the guy says is a lie, then you don't have enough to return a conviction. Now, let me just say, though, prosecutors can come back from this. And I still think a conviction is, I had been saying 60 to 70% likely. I'm going to downgrade that to 50, but no outcome would shock me here. No outcome would surprise me. I think thus far, the trial has gone mild. My odds have gone down a bit of conviction because I think mostly because Cohen imploded like that. But there's still a lot to go.
Elie, thanks for coming on, helping us understand all this, and look forward to our next chat.
We'll do a post on it when it's over.
Yes, take care.
All right, thanks.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Matty Rosenberg, and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Lengyel. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.